Hello everyone, welcome to task for today, TFT-23. We are studying sociology through different tasks, and in the last TFT we studied about religion and society. Today's task is on work and economic life. Now, if someone asks you, why should you work? What would your answer be? I'm sure you would say something along the lines of, I want to serve the society, I want to work for my fulfillment, I want to help the needy, or I want to take care of my family. Some would also say, I want to attain authority or prestige in society. So, these needs that you're talking about are quite varied and subjective, and they differ from one person to another. But what would a sociologist say? Why should a person work? Because perhaps the social institution of work serves a purpose in society, serves a function in society. And this function is to take care of certain needs of people. I have attached here a screenshot of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Though it is not in our syllabus, it is not a part of sociology, yet it would give you a fair idea of what needs a man faces. We start from the basic needs, which are the physiological needs, requirement of essential items like food, clothing. Then we move on to safety needs. Then come love and belongingness needs. Then esteem, and finally self-actualization needs. So the basic purpose of work would be to take care of our financial needs, because if we did not work, we would not earn money and we would not be able to buy food, we would not be able to buy a house or rent a house, we would have no place to sleep, no clothes to wear. So these basic needs are fulfilled by our employment. Work is the foundation of an economic system. What is work? If we have to define work, then we could say that work refers to carrying out of tasks which are required to produce goods and services, and this work requires certain mental and physical effort, and it takes care of our needs. And the economic system, it is formed from different kinds of work. It includes certain institutions that provide for production of goods and services. So, work takes place through economy. Economy means the institutions which are responsible for production and distribution of goods and services. And who is going to produce? People are going to produce, and this activity will be known as work. Now, all the work does not lead to growth of an economy. So, what kind of work is included in economic growth? It refers to occupation, the work which is done in exchange for a regular wage or salary. When we think of social organization of work, we can trace the evolution of work since pre-industrial times. You would remember that while studying Marx, we read about the different societies that were existing in pre-industrial world. What were these societies? They were slave societies, feudal societies. Now, in these societies, what happened? The work, whatever work was going to take place, took place at home. So home was the unit of production. Whether the work consisted of agriculture or weaving or certain craft making, anything that would take place, the place of production was home. Therefore, work included mastery of a craft. For example, we had weavers, we had potters, and they would do all the work by themselves. One person would do the entire work. So all aspects of the production process was done by one person. But with the advent of industrialization, there was a separation of the home and the workplace. Now home was no longer a unit of production, but it became a unit of consumption. And work was divided into two types. One was the real work, which included a wage, and it was done by the men of the family, while the other work, which was domestic work, for example, household chores, taking care of children, cooking, this was done by women. And now the work which was done in the factories, it was not related to the mastery of a craft, but instead now people had to be masters of certain skills. Thus, they were not responsible for the whole production process, but they were a part of the production process. And thus we had a concept known as division of labor, where work was divided into different skills and each skill was given to or assigned to different people. So, Durkheim, the functionalist perspective, he says that in the modern society or industrial society, work consisted of specialized division of labor. So, while initially work used to take place at home, work was the unit of production and it required a mastery of craft, and also this work was carried on by members of a household. But in the industrial society, what happened? Work was specialized. So any particular work was now divided into different smaller tasks. Let us think of these as small tasks, and each task required a certain skill which was given to a particular worker. So each worker was now dependent on other workers for the completion of the job, for the production process. Thus there was an economic interdependence, and also there was a new form of unity which was known as organic solidarity, just like in the organism. But a side effect of this economic interdependence was a rise in individualism and self-interest, because now the people were involved in different tasks and not similar tasks like in pre-industrial societies. Durkheim also mentioned that with the rise in capitalism, with industrialization, increasing individualism, came anomie. There was a normlessness situation, and people did not follow the earlier rules, norms, or values. And a new class of professionals emerged because of specialized division of labor. They were the professional workers, and they were rewarded heavily Because of this specialization, they were given more income, higher prestige in society because of their contribution in society. And these people, they were personal service professions. Personal because they tended to the personal needs of human beings. For example, some were psychiatrists, some were devoted to social work, some were nurses, teachers, or some were doctors or other medical professionals. They started influencing people. So, the earlier situation of normlessness now gave rise to a new form of emergence of norms in society. And these norms were contributed by the personal service professionals. They started influencing the moral values of Western societies. And how? Because their ideology included concern, sympathy, and affection for those who were to be helped, because these were caring for others. They were helping people meet their personal needs, and they also became significant because of their concern and personal involvement. And with time, what happened? They were not restricted to one particular or their own sphere of influence, their own job area, but they started permeating, or they started invading, influencing the social life also. For example, the world of business and commerce, because now the industries also started realizing the importance of personal management. So they started employing personal managers, industrial relationship experts. They also started to think of CSR, or corporate social responsibility. So a new value system emerged because of these personal service professionals, and according to their kind, even though the earlier values and norms lost significance, yet a new moral order could be achieved because of these new set of professionals. And what were these values? They were of concern, sympathy, affection, all these moral values. But Karl Marx has a different view. He brings the concept of alienation while studying about work and economic life. He says that in the industrial world, there are two new emergence, and these are mechanization of production as well as specialized division of labor. And these are responsible for alienation of workers. How? Because this mechanization leads to reduction in the need for skill and intelligence. Also, it removes all the individual character and the charm from the work, because now the worker is performing his task monotonously, and there is no need for personal touch in his work, and he is simply doing his job mechanically as a part of the machine, and he is like a cog in the wheel, or one bolt, you can say, in that entire machinery. He has no more influence than a bolt. And the second cause is specialized division of labor, and according to Marx, men are trapped in their occupational roles because they must specialize in a particular activity. So if one is a job operator in machine 1, then he has to specialize only in machine 1. He cannot do the job of machine 2. Thus he is trapped in this particular role. This is specialization, but it has a negative effect, and because of which the worker starts getting alienated. Now, there is another perspective known as the pluralist perspective. They say that in a factory or in a plant where workers are employed under a certain employer, they say that trade unions start forming to represent the interests of these working class, and they are in favor of the manual working class, and they ensure that this working class is integrated into the capitalist society. How? Because now they reach to a particular agreement about the working conditions, about the jobs, about different privileges that they are going to receive, maybe some kind of bonuses. So these trade unions act as a mediator between the employer and the worker, and they stabilize the conflict, they suppress the conflict between employers and the employees. So, according to the pluralists, the working class is no longer a threat to social order, and it has now become a part of the capitalist society, and because of which there is less chance of any kind of class conflict which Marx predicted, because now they have been assimilated into the capitalist system and they are content with their jobs, so they will not revolt. But despite the emergence of trade unions, Marx believed that these unions had the potential to become organized agencies for superseding the very system of wage labor and capital rule. How? These unions, Marx said, would mobilize the workers, and it would bring all the workers on a common platform, and it would help, the trade union would help in the creation of class consciousness. So Marx said that industrial conflicts will not be suppressed, and instead it would lead to a class revolt. Now, in the industrial world, organization of work can be of two types. First one is the formal organization, second is the informal organization. In the formal organization, there is a fixed line of command. There is a hierarchy, that means there is a superior and a subordinate relationship, and each position is assigned certain duties as well as responsibilities. They receive a fixed wage and other benefits. Also, they have a fixed tenure of employment. But on the other hand, the informal organization follows a hire and fire policy, and the term of employment is not fixed. It can be changed as per the will of the employer. Also, there are no social security measures, and the work is not permanent, but it is temporary job. When we think of work, we can imagine a world where people may not necessarily be working at their native places. You would see people from other states coming to your state, to your city. So, this movement of people from one place to another is known as migration. Now, why does migration take place? First cause is marriage. Women, when they get married, they move to the place of their husbands or their in-laws. Second is in search of employment, probably from one village to another or from village to cities, or from one nation to another, people look for better opportunities, better prospects, and they want to experience social mobility. They want to enjoy a higher and better lifestyle. They want to provide for their families. So they migrate to other places. Third one is forced displacement. When, let's say, tribals of a particular area where their land is encroached and probably a new development is coming up, or that area is getting urbanized, or probably a dam is getting built, or a new industry is getting built. So these people are forcibly displaced and they have to move to a new area. So that is also migration. Now, what happens when people migrate from one place to another? They may not be welcomed in their new place. There could be many social conflicts. What could these conflicts be? Maybe they would take up jobs that others do not want, some lower position jobs, some manual jobs. But there could be some innovative migrants who are maybe educated and they might bring in new technologies or skills. They may be entrepreneurs. They may create new services, but they may also, some of them may take jobs from others. They may take the job of the local people. They also may now travel through local transportation. They may avail medical facilities of that particular area. They may enroll their children in the schools of that area. So they are taking away some of the rights of the local people. Also, culturally, they may engage in certain social, religious, and cultural practices which the locals find offensive. And finally, they will encroach upon the common land because they will also use the public property. They may also buy land, rent houses. So these lead to conflicts between the local people and the migrants. Now, when we think of work, we can trace the evolution of women and how they started working. In the pre-industrial societies, women, they did not perform the work of the men. They did not enter into politics or they did not fight wars. But they had a considerable influence within the household because some of them, the wives of craftsmen and farmers, they kept business accounts and some of them also owned small businesses. So, if you remember, in the pre-industrial society, the household was a unit of production. So all the family members, they were involved in the production process, and even the women helped the men in maintaining accounts, in assisting with other small jobs. So they had a place in the household. They had an influence in the household. But modern society brought changes to these households and the influence of women in these households. There was a separation of work from the house. So people used to go to factories to work. And now what would the women do? They would not go to work. So they only had to do the domestic work. They were not responsible for any kind of accounting or businesses. They came to be associated with domestic values and they would take care of the children, maintenance of home and other cooking responsibilities. But there was another section of women, and these were from the affluent class. So these women, they would not do the work themselves, and they would employ maids, nurses, domestic servants. And so these women from the lower classes, from the lower castes, they would perform the work of the women belonging to higher castes or higher classes. Thus, you can see there that this new section of women workers, they came up. And why did they start working? Because the pressure on family increased economically, and some of the male members, they were unemployed, and so the women started working in the household of the affluent women, and they started earning. Now, how did this feminization of labor happen in the modern society? We know that women's participation in the labor force has risen. Now, how did this happen? The first labor shortage was experienced during the First World War. During the war years, women carried out many jobs which were previously regarded as the exclusive province of men, because men were inducted into the army, they fought for their nations, they were involved in First World War, therefore their job was done by the women of the family. Now, after returning from the war, men, they took over most of the jobs, but the established pattern had been broken. What was the pattern? That men would work and women would be responsible for the housework. This pattern was broken because of the First World War. Now, what happened after the Second World War? This gender division of work changed dramatically, because now mechanization happened. Now small domestic tasks, they could be done with the help of machines. There were dishwashers, then there were microwave ovens. So women did not require that much time to complete all the domestic tasks. So they also started joining paid work. Another factor which was responsible for feminization of labor was that now there was a rise in the lifestyle of people, and one income was not sufficient to maintain this lifestyle, and two income was required, and that is why the wives also started working. Now, what happened to domestic labor then? Now, women have started working at their home as well as in the workplace or factories or anywhere else. So now women have an added responsibility, and they are working a double shift, because they are going to their workplace for the paid employment, and they are also working at home, taking care of the household chores, maybe washing, then cooking, taking care of children. This second type of work, which is the work at home, is unpaid. They are not getting any payment for this, but some sociologists say that this unpaid work is also of enormous significance to the economy. Not only the paid work which men do and as well as some of the women do, but even the unpaid work which women do at home, it is also adding on to the economy. How? Because the domestic work, it is providing those services which are helping the paid population. And since women are not being paid for domestic labor, so they start lacking in intrinsic satisfaction. They start experiencing alienation and they experience isolation. Now, labor has come up with new forms now. First one being child labor. International Labour Organization defines child labor as that work which deprives children of their childhood, their potential, their dignity, and which is harmful to the mental, physical, and social growth of children. So, any work which is depriving a child of his mental, physical, social, and moral growth, then that is child labor. Also, child labor interferes with their schooling. How? Because now the child is involved in this different work and he or she cannot attend school, or they may have to drop out or come early from school, attend only half the school. The attendance is also affected. Now, what kinds of different child labor are there? First one is where the child is enslaved, separated from their families. It is a form of slavery. Some are in the form of prostitution. Some are engaged in dealing with drugs. Some are in hazardous occupations. Now, there is another form of labor which is bonded labor. Bond, it is a tie and it is also a chain. Here you can see a person's feet, they are chained. So this is like a cage from which the laborer cannot escape. So you remember in the pre-industrial societies we had slaves. They were bonded laborers and they would stay at the master's house. They would perform all the work and they would be given food and shelter and maybe clothes too. They may or may not be given wages. The same thing now, even in the modern industrial world, we are seeing. Now, what happens in bonded labor? In many places, usually in villages or less developed areas, you would see that a family, they borrow money from some people, money lenders, and when they are unable to repay the money, repay the loan, then they sell themselves or their children to the money lenders. And what do they sell? The labor power of that person. So that person or laborer has to stay at the money lender's house or those who lend credit, and they are given only food, shelter and clothing. They may or may not be given any kind of wage. And these people, they try to repay the loan, but they are unable to do so. Some of them, they are cheated and tricked and they end up as slaves throughout their life. So this is a very sad event because even in modern society we are seeing such forms of slavery, and even modernization has not ended this difficult kind of labor. So the laborer is tied to the cycle of production. There is a term which is given by Jan Bremen. He gives the term neo-bondage, the bondage which is existing today. And he gives this concept with reference to migrant laborers. He says that the migrant laborers, even after liberalization, they have become trapped in the cycle of production because of the rigid capitalist structure. So, we have seen different kinds of laborers. But what happens when people are not working, when they want to work, they are ready to do any kind of job, but they are not getting employed? How does it affect a person? How does it affect a society? So unemployment, it affects an individual, family, as well as society. There are three kinds of effects. On a personal level, the person who is unemployed may enter into antisocial, unlawful activities in order to earn money, because they are not having the means to earn livelihood. They do not know how to make money, but they need food, they need shelter, they need clothing. How do they meet their needs? They may start committing crimes, they may start stealing, robbing people, they may start smuggling, they may enter into human trafficking. This is the personal disorganization can be related to deviance concept, which was given by Merton. Now, what happens on a family level? On a family level also, because of unemployment, there is a discord within the family. Because now, if the male member has become unemployed, then the woman takes up a job, and this creates a difference between the husband and wife, and there is a disbalance in the family structure. The third type of effect is the social effect. How does a social or society gets affected because of unemployment? Here, the relationships between members of that particular community or group break down or get dissolved. The unemployed person may lose the desire to work, and with time the skills may deteriorate because they are not practicing, they are out of touch. As a result, it is a loss to the whole community because there are many people who are not working. So other people have to work hard, or probably if they do not work, then they would make less money and they would have a lesser lifestyle, or they would have lesser privileges, lesser income. Then how do we solve this problem of unemployment? First is by controlling the population growth. We should adopt methods to control population. We should teach people. We should spread awareness about the benefits of family planning. We can also go for the development of non-agricultural subsidiary industries. So we should shift people from agriculture to non-agricultural alternatives. We can also encourage entrepreneurship spirit. We can help people find self-employment. We have many self-help groups for people. We have Seva. So when we encourage this entrepreneurship spirit, then people not only find employment, but they also help in the employment of others. Now, today, in the times of COVID-19, starting from March till today, we are facing a lot of crisis in the area of work, in the area of labor, and not only the informal sector has been affected because of work, but even the formal sector has been affected. The informal sector, domestic labor, was affected because those who relied on domestic labor, the house servants, the cleaners, they were not allowed to enter the house of their employers. So they lost work, they lost money, and their family suffered. Even the migrant laborers, they had to return. Some of them were not even able to return. Some of them lost their lives. Some of them became sick. Some of them wanted to walk for so many miles, but they ended up getting exhausted mentally, physically. So COVID-19 has affected all sections of people, and the formal sector has also been affected. Earlier, in the formal sector, there was a difference between home and the workplace. But now, with COVID-19, people started working from home. Their family life was affected because now they had to work past their usual working hours. The work hour was not fixed, and they could not devote time to their families because now they were working all the time. Some of them were laid off. Their employers said that they could not afford them and they had to leave work. Some of them had to face salary cuts, wage cuts. Many of them left their job because of this decrease in salaries. Even the women were affected because now they had to be involved in educating their children also, as all the classes were being held online. So not only they had to do all the cooking and caring for the children, but they also had to devote time to educating their children. So COVID-19 gave rise to an increase in reverse migration. Most of these migrants were unskilled and semi-skilled laborers, and although they were the invisible drivers of the informal economy of urban India, but COVID-19 did not give any respite to them, and it broke this backbone of the economy. And these people who had gone to other areas, who had migrated to other places to derive profits, and because those places needed cheap labor, they found that the new area was not able to sustain them, was not able to help them, was not able to bring certainty in this uncertain situation, because of which they had to come back to their native place. The other current affairs that you can read about is on feminization of labor. With increase in females at workplace, the workplace rules and regulations need to be changed, need to be more women friendly, and it needs to provide a safe environment for women, and it should strengthen the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act 2013. Also, strict punishment should be enforced in case of any laxity, in case of any harassment, and women should be encouraged to speak up in case of any misbehavior or any kind of sexual approach by colleagues. So today's topic, you will be studying from the Orange Haralambous chapter on work and leisure. Please read selectively. Start from those topics which I have covered in this TFT, and then if you find time, you can read the remaining portions. And Sociology by Anthony Giddens, I would advise you to read it. It is a very important chapter. and it will give you a lot of depth in your answers and insights to add on, especially regarding the modern world or the industrial society. So the next TFT will be on politics and society. And all the very best for today's TFT. Enjoy, study well, and don't get disheartened. All the best.